Hey everybody, Isaiah Colton here. I have Chris Walker on the line with me here as well through our Zoom chat here. We're really excited today because we're going to be talking about how the riches are in the niches. So if you haven't heard that phrase before, a little bit of background is that one of the most common mistakes in sales, marketing, and when somebody goes to do their business plan is they go out there, they have all these great ideas, but they're scattered all over the place. And it's the whole analogy of the shotgun approach versus the rifle approach, where the shotgun, it's spread, everything spreads out, where the rifle has a bigger impact. And doing a business plan is very important to think about your business plan like that, where you have to have more of a rifle approach, especially if you're kind of like the early phases of your business. If you're going out there and you're trying to work 15 types of leads, sources, and you don't really have a specific niche or a specific market you're going after, you're going to find where you make some progress, but you're not going to really catapult to the next level as quick as you could by getting and focusing on specific niches. So the recommendation, based on all the top producers that we work with and all the people that I've interviewed and how I built my business, is you start off, if you're brand new, you start off with one, maybe two niches. And then you kind of, once you've mastered those niches, you can feel free to expand, and maybe you can have, as you start building a team, have somebody help you with some of the other niches so they don't slide. But it's really, really important to not spread yourself too thin from a marketing standpoint, from a budget standpoint, from a focus standpoint. One of the most powerful niches that I've experienced and has made me a ton of money and has helped me produce wealth is for sale by owners and expireds. And I know the reason why I have Chris Walker on the line with me, because I know it's done the same thing for you guys. It's been a game changer for your business, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what we're going to do is kind of talk about for sale by owners and expireds. This is a 3-part series, and we're going to kind of reverse into it. We're going to talk about the sales side, and then we're going to back up into the prospecting and then the marketing. Okay. So make sure you stay tuned because it's a 3-part series. We're going to keep today to about 20 minutes to half an hour. And I'm going to just go rapid fire questions at you, Chris. And I know you said that's kind of what you like. You just, hey, give me rapid fire questions. And so for our audience, just to let you know, none of this is scripted and planned. I have some questions that I am going to ask Chris. So these are authentic responses based on how he does it and in the trenches every single day in today's world, in today's market, right? So let's talk about for sale by owners and expireds. First of all, why do you pick that as a niche, and why should our audience consider really mastering the art and science of working for sale by owners and expireds, Chris?
Well, one, because they want to sell their house.
Right. Right.
That's the given. So
yes.
You know that there's motivation there in both those groups, that you're not going in blind, that you know that they have motivation to let you go to work for them. It's just up to you to figure out if it's the right fit or not.
Yeah, and I think to your point that a lot of people are going to take that for granted, what you just said, and I don't want people to do that, because how much time, energy, marketing dollars do we spend, right, to get to the point to just find out if somebody really wants to sell or not?
Yeah,
right.
That's half the battle right there.
Yes. So literally, you're eliminating a whole bunch of cost, time, and energy because, to your point, they've already raised their hand saying they want to sell. I think that's huge. Awesome. Any other reasons before we move on?
Well, especially with with expired listings, that they're more likely to believe you this go round.
Right.
Sometimes it is better to be the second one than the first, because you get for lack of a better word, a hard-headed seller. Mm-hmm. They're more inclined to listen to you and be more open. To what you're going to bring to the table than the first go round. Yeah,
that's so true. So as far as for sale by owners and expireds, do you have a preference? Do you have just your own personal preference? I know some agents like to work for sale by owners more. Others like to work expireds more. Do you have a personal preference if they have to kind of pick one to attack?
Whatever brings in the money.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think expireds are
a little easier in the beginning.
Yeah. And I've made especially getting started out, because I've only been doing this 6 years, getting started out as a newer agent, expireds were what built my business.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another powerful thing, is because if you're trying to build your book of business, it's a great way to start, because then you develop relationships with these people. The cost to generate the lead usually is lower, and and it fits your target market, it fits a niche, and then you can get referrals and build, kind of your have met database, so to speak, off of expireds from there. So people ask me, Isaiah, if you were to be dropped down into a marketplace where nobody knew you, what would be the first thing you do? And my answer is I would sign up for an expired database, a for sale by owner database, and I would do what I recommend people doing right now every single day, and that's prospecting, following up, marketing to these people, because it doesn't matter where you are. It's an awesome opportunity.
Yeah, and I can't reiterate, enough what you just said about, going out and something and the referrals that follow. And I think it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. It was from y'all. I think it was an expired for like $100,000 and not so great area, part of town. But I was just like, you know what? Let's go do it. The lady seemed nice. She was older, and it translated to over $1 million worth of business.
That is incredible, man.
That I sold her sister a house in a better part of town for $500,000, and her brother bought a house. So
that's incredible, man. So that came off of, so we gave you had one appointment in your database, it was 100,000, and then you just kept getting referrals from that, and that turned into $1 million.
From that person. Yep, it was her mom's house that her mom passed away, so it was older. It was kind of one of those things I really didn't want to do, but something I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's do it. It was a good time of the year, and
that's great,
business, man. And it happened for a reason.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the common mistakes is, which we're going to get into a little bit later on, is that you got to be careful, very careful what we prejudge, because we never know what it's going to turn into. Now, as you get busier, that naturally kind of, you have to be a little bit more selective by nature, because you're just going on more appointments. You have more going on, so your qualification criteria might change over time. But with for sale by owners and expireds, because you don't know them, until you get to know them, you don't know what it can turn into. Yeah. I think that's a really, really important point.
Yeah, prejudging, we're all guilty of it.
Yeah.
And I think my favorite story is, the little boy that had 2 apples, and his mom asked for an apple, and he bit one apple and bit the other, and he was eating both of them. And the mother was, so disappointed.
Huh.
And she, why would my son do this and eat both apples after I ate for him? Then he handed her an apple, and he goes, "Here, Mama, here, this one's sweeter." So
wow.
you think about the same thing in real estate, that I don't want to do this, but might be handing you something, that you're judging.
Right.
Here's the reason why you've taken a bite out of it, because you're trying to get something better from it.
That's a good
analogy. And I love that story. That has always been, one of my,
that's really good
in life and business. That prejudging is just, it could be detrimental personally and for your business.
It can be a killer. Be a killer. I've actually coached a team. They had a kind of it was almost an epidemic. It's a strong word, but one of the things that we were digging down in their business, they were going out on, are they getting a lot of appointments, getting a lot of leads coming in. And if you dug down into it, they're having a conversion problem. And there's another team actually that I work with that's in the same exact marketplace. And we pulled up almost getting the same amount of leads. And one team's just, they're just rocking it with us. Yeah. And the other team, not getting the results that they wanted. And the layer to that was basically they had a pre-qualification process. And they were using a pre-qualification process that you normally would work more on a have met market. Mm-hmm. But they were using that pre-qualification process before they would go down the appointment to somebody that they didn't know them. So the way they were asking the questions caused them to want to prejudge, but they weren't giving truthful answers because the questions were evasive and not rapport building questions, and they were ruining a ton of opportunities. So that was just one example of prejudging. They fixed that, and literally they ended up closing almost $1 million a month more in business off of the program just by fixing that one thing. So I think that's really strong. So let's talk about expireds versus for sale by owners. Expireds a little bit different. For sale by owners, I think it's more of a journey with them, right? Yeah. You got to have a little bit of a different approach. So let's talk about let's just say the appointment's already been set, whether you did it yourself or whether an ISA did it or it came in off of a marketing piece, which we're going to talk about in other sessions. Okay. So I want to hone in on the expired listing for a second and then transition to the for sale by owner. And you're preparing for the meeting. So this is where we're at. You're preparing for the meeting. What's your first step when you're working an expired listing? And then we'll go to the first step if it's any different with a for sale by owner.
Yeah, the expired listing, and I think I touched on this previously in the last session, was, the three things that can be changed, the price, the condition, and how it's marketed. So I got to figure out which one of those three, or two of the three, or all three that were done on an expired listing. And once I figure that out, then I've got my glue I can go to that seller with and say, hey, this is what we're going to do to fix it. If it was how it was marketed, hey, this is my marketing plan, how I'm going to reach, more people than your last agent to get more people in the door.
Right.
Or if it is the condition, going, hey, you know what, I hate to get you to spend money, but sometimes you got to spend a little bit to make a little bit.
Right.
And, go that route. Or if it just flat out was the price, you got to show them, I bring my iPad and, say here, this is why, you're overpriced compared to what, your neighbors are selling for. And even if I could get you this price, the bank's not going to loan the money. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometime for them. But your main thing is just to figure out which one of those three went wrong last time.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And what I'm going to kind of come at it a different angle. It sounds to me like what you're doing is you're looking for pain and motivation.
Yeah.
So you're looking to find a pain of why that house didn't sell. And then be able to, at the appropriate time, bring that to the table, bring that to the meeting. And I think one of the things that is so important is that when we're doing our pre-listing planning, or we're doing our research, as a sales professional, when I ask somebody how they build rapport and how they qualify, which is a major step, if I don't hear them talk about trying to find a pain or motivation, there's a huge error there, because that tells me that they're not maybe they're looking at the analytics, they're looking at the numbers, right, which is fine. But below that, you got to be looking and either on what the initial call was about. You got to be finding a way to poke holes either in the previous process of how it was marketed, how it was priced, and what was the third one?
Condition.
In the condition. So you got to be trying to develop a game plan to make sure you have poke a hole in that process. And if you haven't purchased it yet, or if you're a current client, you get this included into your package. You go to the ultimatelistingmachine.com, log in. If you haven't purchased it, you should go purchase it, because there's a whole section in there on different questions that you can ask or information that you can analyze. Okay, I think there's like 20 different angles you can go after it to find pain and motivation when you're working with a for sale by owner or an expired. It's broken down by each one.
Yeah, and to touch on what you said, I mean, there's probably only I know of 2 questions that I ask every single time to anybody that I'm in front of. And the first one is something that, has been drilled in my head. And I remember, it's Gary Keller's thing is, what's your big why? Mm-hmm. And that's what you ask your seller is why you're doing. Like you said, your motivation.
Yeah.
Now, what's your motivation? Are you wanting to get closer to your grandkids? Are you downsizing, upsizing? And you just got to continue to reiterate during the process and remember why they're doing this, because it can be a stressful time, as we all know. But then we got to say, hey, we want to get closer to those grandkids in, Jacksonville. So this is why we're doing this, and just kind of, coaching them and that way. And they remember, okay, yeah, you're right. This is why we're doing it, So you got to, that first question that I always ask is, the big why, and I think just to drill that in and just remember that you got to find that motivation.
Yeah, because then you're incorporating it into your whole presentation, right, as you're kind of going along. So that's good. So let's take it from there, and let's transition into talking a little bit about for sale by owners, because there is a little bit of a different process and they have different pain points, right? So off the top of your head, what are you looking for pain and motivation when it comes to a for sale by owner versus an expired?
Well, the for sale by owner, 9 times out of 10, it's just they're trying to save money. It's simple as that. I know that sounds cliche, but almost every single, I've never had someone go, you know what, I just want to do it because I want to do it on my own. And if they did, then get your real estate license, And I tell people that one of my comebacks is, you know what, here, let me give you my broker's number if you want to become a realtor, I'll put you in my downline, come to our office and we'll work together. We'll help me out if that's what
That's
you want
awesome.
to do,
That's awesome.
It's just kind of, one of those, I very rarely get that response, but all of it's, well, I want to do it on my own so I can save the commission,
Right.
And the main thing.
So their motivation is trying to save money for most of them, right?
But it's up to us and sometimes it's not always doable,
Mm-hmm.
to make it a win-win situation. And that's what I tell all of them. I say, you know what, if we can make this a win-win situation where I can make you the money you want to make and then pay me, would you do it? And they're, 9 times out of 10, well, sure, absolutely,
Yep.
And that's where you got to say, does this make sense for me to do this? If I do this, is my listing going to be overpriced? Is it going to sit there? Or can I actually sell it and make it a win-win situation?
Right.
And if you can, that's the for sale by owners you want
That's right.
you can sink your teeth into.
That's right. And that's where it is a little bit different of And I think that that's why it's so important to kind of know what their motivation is too, outside of just the commissions.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's interesting, sometimes you run across all different profiles. Literally, you'll have in timing. So the timing and the profile. And what's interesting is a lot of the for sale by owners that are out there, and this is where I think some people choose not to work them because they tend to lump all for sale by owners into one bucket.
Yeah.
And I break them down into two, if not three different buckets. So you have your early stage for sale by owners.
Those are right on their own for a little bit. Yeah.
Those are the toughest, right? So, but if
follow up comes in.
Yes, that's right. If you develop a relationship with them, you go in, the pain motivation, that maybe you're not going to get it on the spot no matter what you do, you still try. But then if you have a good follow-up sequence, statistically, okay, they don't go on average. The average for sale by owner doesn't go any longer than 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but I plan on being in business 3 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Right? So, but it amazes me how many agents would not consider meeting with that person because they're not willing to list with them right then and there. Right. And that's what I'm talking about. Qualification is you got to be careful how you qualify depending on the lead type that you're working.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars I've made and my team's made by not prejudging and developing a relationship with that for sale by owner. Mm-hmm. And it's so, so important that we don't do that. Now, here's the thing. There are some that you might end up wasting your time with. That comes with the territory, though. We've all been in situations where we've went on an appointment or we worked a lead and maybe it didn't end up being a fit, but that's part of the process of sales. No matter what we do, right? If we're going to work our have not met markets, it's going to be a different conversion than it's going to be with our warm market.
Yeah,
it just
and
it
going
just
back
is.
to what you said about just meeting with them, and if they'll take the meeting just to go introduce yourself and to say hey, and that, I mean, I don't know the exact percentage, but some of these for sale by owners, they're listing themselves because they don't know an agent. I mean, that is an objection that you'll get sometimes. Well, I don't know anybody. That's why they use some of websites and searches and stuff to find an agent. So if you're at least willing to go meet with them, you've introduced yourself, you've made a friend, as I like to say. And then you're going to be when they do decide to list, they're going to be like, well, now I know an agent, and they're going to call you. So
that's really good. And I think that, if you, literally we've tracked even with our own brokerage, what will happen is we'll meet with for sale by owners. We'll get 3%. If you take let's say we met with 100 for sale by owners. Okay. Mm-hmm. You're going to, a good agent, if they work the process the right way, is going to convert, at least for our brokerage, we convert 20 to 30% of those right away. Yeah. They've gone through this, they fall kind of in the second bucket where they've went 2 to 3 weeks or a month, and they've gone through the pain of trying to sell on their own. They've experienced it, and now they're more open, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those ones are easier to grab, and you can get them quicker if you have a good sales process.
For sure.
But where we'll also get another 20 to 30% is by doing proper follow-up and developing the right relationship, having educational materials. So one of the things that we do is for our brokers, we actually have an online class. It's an online course that we give them a free login to it, and it actually walks them through the process on how to sell their home.
Oh, that's cool.
A to Z, and they can go through the different videos. And what happens is there's drips built into it. And what's great about it is it keeps us in front of them throughout the process, we get so many callbacks because of that online
awesome.
course
that's a really good idea.
that we give to them. It's absolutely phenomenal. And Chris, I'll actually give you the login to that. I can duplicate it and just have you use it if you want to use it. And it's really simple. You just say, hey, go to this site, put your information in there, and then it'll log you in, and you can just kind of go through the course, and it walks them through step by step on what they need to do to sell their house.
Yeah.
And now you're the advisor. You're providing education, and you get a ton of callbacks. It automatically follows up with them and say, here's a tip here, and it kind of keeps them into a drip. So,
cool.
So for-sale by owners are really a different beast, but it really goes back to mindset, right? Is you got to understand the psychology of the niche or the profile of lead that you're working. Yep. And then once you understand it, you have a process. And so I think the reason why I'm spending so much time on this part is because what happens, and the big mistake is before we get to the appointment, we're not going into it the right mindset. And it's like we don't have a plan for the battle. We don't have a strategy. And the strategist will always crush the tactician. Yeah. The strategist will always crush the tactician. So understand the profile, understand the strategy, and then when you go, then you start the process, the tactical process of winning the listing starts. And so let's start there. Okay, you're going out to the appointment. You've done your research. You have your plan. You know pain and motivation. You're going to the listing. Listing appointment, or what I call a discovery meeting. Okay. I use that term because it lowers their guard, right? So basically you're going to the discovery meeting to figure out whether it makes sense to work together or not. Right. And that's gotta be the mindset, right? To figure out if it makes sense to work together or not. And what's your first objective when you walk in that door? What's your first goal, Chris?
Well, you call it a discovery meeting. I call it, I'm going to make a friend.
Right.
So that's my main thing is,
Yeah.
I'm very different than a lot of people. I don't bring anything to that initial meeting with me at all.
Yeah.
I bring myself.
Right.
And my main focus of 80% to 90% of the time that I'm there is talking about them and them alone.
Right.
I don't even talk about the house. We go and, we'll do a tour, and I find stuff in the house that I can relate to and relate to them about. I talk about them, find that motivation, and make it all about them, and then I let, follow up take over. But, I'm not a pushy person. I mean, I do live in the South, so I find that that's a little bit better down here, that I'm not as aggressive maybe as I should be. But going back to what I said, remember when I said I asked 2 questions at every meeting? Mm-hmm. This is the other one that I ask, and this is what's beneficial. Is before I, in that doorway walking out, and I said, "Can I ask you one more thing before I leave?" Everybody's, absolutely. I said, "What's your objection of not signing an agreement with me right now? Mm. What is holding you back right now from doing this?" Mm-hmm. And then you got to find that objection of going, well, I'm, the cost, or I'm still interviewing other agents, or whatever it may be. And it's up to you to be able to knock that objection down right then and there.
Yep.
And say, you know what, hey, I'm going to go ahead as soon as I get home. I'm going to send you my agreement to look over. I don't want you to have to worry about these other, whatever their objection is, and say, you know what, I'm going to put that to bed. I can fix it right here and there. Whether it's, I only want to list for a couple months instead of, 6 months or something, done, fine.
And if you don't ask, they won't tell you.
Exactly. So
they won't tell you.
What is stopping you right now from, signing an agreement? I don't bring any paper. My CMAs are all done email. If I go back on a second one, that's when I bring my stuff. I'll bring an iPad and, do, digital stuff like that. But that first meeting, that initial mindset, and it could be different in different parts of the country, but down here, we're just a little slower. We take it easier. Mm-hmm. And that's worked for me, and
and I think that's a good point too, because everyone's got different personality styles. Everyone has a different comfort level. There's different cultures we got to pay attention to all of those things and factor all those things into our process. And, basically when I've seen it trained and coached different ways, everyone's got a little bit of a different strategy or philosophy. There's kind of a two-step process, which is kind of what you're talking about, right? It's the first more of a introductory discovery and then maybe another meeting, right? And that's the plan. That's generally the plan. It's not to say you don't get listings on the spot, but the plan is to kind of make it a two-step, two-part process. And then there's the hey, look, let's go get it. I'm going to ask for right then and there, sign here, right? Yeah. And so how I personally like to train it is I like to train it situationally, meaning like if you know the profile of what you're dealing with and you're looking at what's happening, be prepared to get the listing on the spot. But if you're sensing that it might be a better fit for a two-step based on where they're at in their cycle, the rapport, what's going on, you can, I like training it where you kind of feel it out situationally. So for example, if I'm working with a for sale by owner that just listed, okay, or just put it up as for sale by owner, I know my odds of getting that on the spot and trying to hard close them into an agreement, right, are a lot lower, right?
Sure.
Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be prepared for it, but my initial approach is probably going to be different when I go to build rapport and the first my first step of my listing presentation is going to be different, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to start it off differently until I can feel out what's going on and when I meet them and shake their hand. But I love what you said is the goal, no matter whether you use the hard, the one meeting close or whether you're doing it in two steps, whatever your strategy is, you'll never get to the point of being able to ask that objection or ask that question if you don't make a friend first.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And you don't build rapport. And so let's say you go ahead.
Interrupt you, but while it's on the top of my head,
go ahead.
I'm just curious. I'm gonna fire back at you.
Yes.
I know my number, and you've been doing this a lot longer than I have.
Yeah.
How many times have you gone into a listing, an expired or sub owner, and they've signed that day right then and there?
30% of the time.
30% of the time. Okay.
Yeah. 30% of the time on average.
In the 6 years I've done this, I've had that happen once.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is it's just a strategy difference, right? Yeah. And it's a difference with the psychology and how we roll with it. So and by the way, whether it's this sales process or any other sales process that I've ever taught for other organizations, when I look at them, they all have different ways of doing it. What I do is I build it with the expectation. You build your sales process out with the expectation that they're going to do business with you right now.
Yeah.
And because that expectation's there, but people are like, well, I feel pushy. The problem is, and this is again just my experience is how I built out sales plans. If people are having that feeling, there's something wrong in their sales process. It's giving the person that feeling. So for example, I was training and coaching a big mega agent, and we were having this talk, and well, I don't ask for it because I feel pushy. And I said, okay, well, let me ask you, what makes you feel pushy? Well, I don't want to offend them or turn them off because it ruins my chances of getting the deal. Okay, well, what are you saying that's going to offend them or push them off when you go to ask for it? Well, how are you saying it? And we kind of broke it down. And what ended up happening was it was actually part of their listing presentation. There was a specific point when they were going through their objection cycle where how it was worded, it was actually offending people. What they were saying was offending people.
Yeah.
Not every type of personality, but it was just how they were doing it. So we changed, which we'll get into once we get into the objection cycle, but it changed actually. So instead of what was happening is they weren't showing empathy so that they would say why they didn't want to do something. They weren't showing empathy. They were going right into the objection without showing empathy. Mm-hmm. And so therefore people didn't feel heard or understood.
Yeah, okay.
And so they wouldn't let them get through the next part of the cycle.
Yeah.
So, so where what we did is we did a whole training on okay, before you respond to this objection, make sure that they feel heard and understood. You don't have to agree with them, but it has to sound something like this. John, I totally appreciate where you're coming from. And if I were in your shoes, I might be saying the same thing. What I'd like you to do, though, is look at it from a different angle. And once they started using that language, they started getting through 3 or 4 cycles and then getting the listings on the spot.
Okay.
So all going back to empathy. So my best case study on that is Suzanne Murtha, who is another longtime client, been with us for over 4 years. She is phenomenal at building rapport, giving a listing presentation, but what she's best at is showing empathy in between her objection cycle. She's so good at it. And she's a KW agent. She lands probably about the same stat. She'll land 20 to 30 on this 20-30% on the spot.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Regardless of what the strategy is, that doesn't mean that that's the best way for any individual. It's just a strategy. You can still win
what works for you.
Yeah,
that's important. There's, plenty of ways to get
to skin a cat,
or
whatever the saying is.
You can get, count to 8, and add it, do it all.
Yeah.
Different ways you want to get it, but at the end of the day, we're all going to get the same answer.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things I teach is, if you're going to use a 2-step, is making sure you leave there. Assuming you have rapport and there's an opportunity, with the expectation is that you set up a time to follow up, and they give you kind of a verbal commitment that before you follow up, they give you a chance to talk to them about marketing or pricing or something. You leave them with some curiosity to get that second appointment, so they don't go list with somebody else in the meantime. So that's kind of one of the things that I teach, is to try to leave that meeting with some curiosity, a little bit of doubt, a reason to follow up. So that way they don't go list with somebody else in the meantime.
And have I had that happen to me? Oh, absolutely. And that's where it happens to all of us, that I've set it up going, you know what, I'm coming back next week and I'm going to knock it out of the park. I've made a friend, and then my friend,
my friend listed with
someone else 3 days later. It's right. Like, well, I guess I'm not going back.
Yeah.
It stings, but you move on.
Yeah.
And sometimes your approach, it's not going to work, and that's the way that, if you've been in this business long enough, you just you got to have that it is what it is mentality, or it's going to eat you up.
That's right. And and I think this is a really good conversation that I want to circle back to in a little bit more in-depth, and more of an in-depth training, when it talks about actually you've gotten through the listing presentation. Now you're in the objection cycle. So we built rapport and we're qualifying. Now you got to build value. So that's kind of the next step in our process, is when you're going through your listing presentation, what are some important components that you really want to get across to wow them, or to see the value of Chris?
Yeah. And that for sale by owners, my main thing is safety and security. I've hit on that as the value of going, you know what, your home is going to be well cared for. You know who's going to be coming and going. You don't have to worry about picking up, John Smith off Craigslist and coming in your house, and Lord knows what they're doing, So, the value that we bring, in safety and security, that always seems to help, with people. And that is some of their, they never thought about that, or things like that. So that does help. And then the other value that everybody says is, you get paid a good amount of money. What are you doing for that money? And to put a dollar amount on it, it's just like any other profession, like a doctor. If you go to a heart doctor, they make lots of money, and they're good at what they do. People get it, and they're going to make more money for it. Just like real estate agents, the people that have, the makeup and the stats to back up, going, this is why people come to me. You're going to make more money and not have to reduce commissions after, being asked, going, well, such and such said they're going to do this for, 2%. I said, well, good for such and such. And I think it's so funny that those commercials that they have now, that you want to just be okay. Mm-hmm. Have you seen those? Like, it's like a doctor that he's.
Oh yeah,
I just got reinstated. Because I see in there,
I love it.
I feel okay about it, And I just like, I was like, man, that is so real estate when people ask you, your value and to reduce your commission is, do you want just okay? And here, this is, I'm not okay. And this is, I sell, 50 houses a year. This is, I'm good at what I do, and I have the stats to back it up, and that's important to other people, is going, if you just want okay, that's what you're going to get, and how much money are you leaving on the table from saving, 1% of commission?
Yeah.
Go to someone that's willing to go to bat, and the cliche everybody says is, if someone's willing to reduce their commission right now, how are they willing to, negotiate on your behalf? And that's an oldie, but I mean, it's true.
It's so
there's
true.
some agents out there that just want to make a buck and get a deal together. But at the end of the day, is that a win-win situation for everybody? It's not.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that's so true.
Right.
I think that the reason why, and going back to building value, the better job that we do in our presentation of building value, it's easier to justify the commission, right? And not to say that you're not still going to get that objection with a first time owner expired, or because there's a lot of commission conversations happening, especially in today's market with all the different ways to list your property. It's a natural part of the process. And one of the things that I recommend is when you're building out your listing presentation, especially if you haven't done this before, think strategically about the pain points that they go through and the motivation that they go through. And your presentation should be tailored around building value on overcoming their pain and motivation, and also justifying why you deserve every single dime that you get. And that's what a good presentation will do. It'll handle a lot of objections before you actually get to the objections. Right. And so I'd recommend, if you don't have a good listing presentation, you can go to ultimatelisteningmachine.com. It's part of the course we do. We get different templates with this psychology built into it. The 7 steps, if you haven't heard me train on the 7 steps, it's building rapport and qualifying, building value, creating urgency and desire, trial closing, overcoming objections, and then how to follow up, and then tracking your metrics.
The other thing that helped me, and you can take that information and find you a partner, someone that's in the business with you, and role play. You can read as much stuff,
so
without spitting it out.
So true.
That's important. My listing presentations, and when I say they're all different, but they're all the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I hit the same points. I do the same thing on all of them, but just with different words.
You're right. Different words, different angles, but same psychology. And that's the nice thing, is that if you're willing to stick with this niche, there's really only 4 or 5 different main profiles or objections you're going to kind of run into frequently. You might get some one-offs here and there, but there's really only a handful of things you got to figure out. And then once you master them, it can be a huge opportunity for growth in your business.
Too, I mean, find someone that's willing,
that's strong.
Find you a good agent that say, hey, you care if I go on one of your listing presentations with you, and go from there and just, soak it up, be a sponge, and as successful and as blessed as I am from what I've done, I still, I want to get better.
Absolutely. Everyone is
not content. And I'm not, too self-confident or cocky or whatever you want to call it, to say, what, there's always room to learn, and,
well, that's why you're good at what you do, is because you have a learning mindset. And I think that you look at all rainmakers, you look at top producers, they're always learning and growing. They're always trying to find the angle. And I want to leave that there, because that's kind of my mantra with our Rainmaker movement, is you're one idea away. You're one idea to increasing your conversion. You're one idea away from attracting the next hire. You're one idea away from taking your marketing plan to the next level. And with that mindset, and I love that you brought that up, because with that learning mindset of the one idea away, it keeps the business fun and exciting. And it keeps it in day one mindset. Like, think about the first day we decided we wanted to make it in real estate, or we wanted to do real estate. That day one mindset's so important. That one idea way is so important. And Chris, I want to thank you for joining us. We're going to pick up our conversation next week, talking a little bit more about the 7-step process. With sales, we'll pick up on creating urgency and desire, and going over some different things you can do to build value. And for our viewers, again, Chris Walker, he absolutely does awesome in this niche, runs a great business and with integrity. And I appreciate you, Chris, as a client and as a friend, and everything that you do to the marketplace. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you. I appreciate it, buddy.
Awesome. Thanks.